The punishment. The night was heavy with silence. Only the sound of the cold wind moving across the colony walls could be heard. Inside the main hall, hundreds of eyes were watching one man standing in chains. His name was Aaron, a human soldier who had once been loyal, brave, and respected. Now he stood as a criminal judged by his own people. The council leader's voice echoed across the hall. You broke the law, Aaron. You disobeyed direct orders, and you brought shame to this colony. The people murmured, whispering insults, some laughing, others shaking their heads. Everyone waited to hear what punishment he would receive. Some thought he would be executed. Some believed he would be sent into the mines until death. But the council had something far worse in mind. The leader raised his hand for silence. As punishment, you will marry the alien slave we bought for $5, he said coldly. The crowd burst into laughter, cruel and loud. Marry an alien slave, what a joke, they shouted. Aaron clenched his fists but said nothing. His pride was broken, but deep inside, his anger burned. Then the doors opened, and guards dragged in the alien. She was thin, her skin greenish with patches of rough texture. Her hair tangled, her clothes torn. The stench of dirt and old wounds followed her. Even the guards turned their faces away, covering their noses. The people laughed louder. Some even spit on the floor in disgust. This is your bride, the leader announced with a cruel smile. She was sold for $5, and now she belongs to you. The alien lifted her head slowly, her eyes glowing faintly yellow in the dim light. For a second, Aaron felt something strange, like her gaze was not empty but filled with quiet strength. Still, the shame burned deeper when he saw people mocking him. You will live with her, care for her, and call her your wife. The leader continued, this is your punishment. May your days be filled with regret. The guards unchained Aaron and shoved him forward. He stumbled but refused to fall, holding his head high. The alien stood close, silent, trembling yet not completely weak. Together they were pushed out of the hall, the sound of laughter following them into the night. The colony streets were dark, filled with whispers. Children pointed and laughed. Women pulled their scarves tighter. Men shook their heads. Human soldier, married to a filthy slave. They muttered. Aaron felt his chest tighten, anger and shame mixing together. He wanted to fight, to scream, to deny everything. But all he could do was keep walking, the alien at his side. They reached a small broken shelter at the edge of the colony. It was old, dirty, and cold, a place where outcasts lived. The guards threw a small bag of bread inside and left. Good luck with your wife, one guard mocked before slamming the door shut. Now it was only Aaron and the alien inside the tiny room. For a long moment, silence filled the air. Aaron sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, staring at nothing. The alien sat in the corner, hugging her knees, her glowing eyes dimmed. The smell of dirt was strong, but Aaron forced himself to breathe. His mind was filled with rage, regret, and shame. Why me? He thought. Why this punishment? The alien made a soft sound, almost like a whisper. Aaron turned his head, confused. She looked at him, her lips moving slowly as if trying to form words. The language was broken, but the meaning was clear enough. You, not monster, she said softly. Aaron froze, surprised that she could speak any human words at all. He wanted to stay angry, he wanted to hate her, but the sadness in her eyes made his heart twist. For the first time, he wondered who she really was. Why was she sold for only $5? Why was she treated like trash? The colony laughed, the council punished him. But maybe there was more behind this alien than anyone knew. That night, Aaron closed his eyes but could not sleep. The alien stayed awake too, whispering strange words to herself. He did not understand, but the sound was soft, almost like a song. Through the cracks of the broken roof, the stars shone down. Aaron thought about his life, his mistakes, and his strange new fate. Punishment had begun. But something inside told him this was only the beginning of a far greater story. The alien bride. Morning light entered the broken shelter, but it brought no warmth. Aaron opened his eyes slowly, his body stiff from the cold ground. He looked around and saw the alien sitting in the same corner where she had been all night, her arms wrapped around her knees, her glowing eyes half closed, like she had not slept at all. The smell in the air was sharp, the mixture of sweat, dirt, and strange herbs clinging to her skin. Aaron felt sick, but he did not speak. Instead, he studied her carefully, noticing details he had missed in the council hall. Her skin was rough but not dead. Tiny silver marks ran like hidden veins across her arms, glowing faintly when the sun touched them. Her hair was tangled, dark with streaks of blue, and her thin body carried the weight of hunger and wounds. She turned her head and looked at him, her yellow eyes glowing brighter in the morning light. For a moment, neither spoke. Only silence filled the air. Then she whispered again in broken human words. "You, angry," she said softly, her voice trembling but brave. Aaron wanted to shout, to release all his shame and anger on her. But when he opened his mouth, only a heavy sigh came out. He stood up and pushed open the broken wooden door. The colony outside was alive, people moving, trading, laughing. But when they saw him, their faces twisted with disgust. Some pointed, others whispered, "There goes the soldier with his stinking bride." They sneered. Aaron clenched his fists but kept walking, the alien following close behind, her steps quiet and careful. At the market, Aaron tried to buy food, but the seller refused. "We don't trade with slaves. Take her away." The man spat. Aaron's jaw tightened, anger rising in his chest. The alien touched his arm gently, her hand shaking, but her touch calmed him. Without words, she pulled him toward a small corner where discarded fruits and vegetables lay rotting. She bent down, picked a bruised apple and handed it to him. Aaron hesitated, but hunger made him take a bite. The alien smiled faintly, as if happy to see him eat. As the day went on, Aaron began to notice strange things. Whenever the alien touched certain herbs or leaves, their smell changed. She crushed some under her fingers and rubbed them on her skin. Slowly, the bad stench that had followed her since last night began to fade. The people around still mocked her, but Aaron could breathe easier. He watched her carefully, realizing she knew more than she showed. Later, back in the shelter, she surprised him again. From under her torn clothes, she pulled out a small pouch. Inside were strange seeds, glowing faintly blue. She placed them in the dirt outside the shelter and whispered in her own language. Within minutes, the seeds sprouted, tiny green shoots rising from the ground. Aaron stared in disbelief. She looked at him with her glowing eyes and said slowly, "Food for us?" For the first time, Aaron felt a strange pull in his chest. This alien, this so-called punishment, was not weak at all. She was clever, patient, and carried secrets in her blood. He sat beside her as she worked with the plants, her hands steady, her lips whispering words he could not understand. The night came, and the small plants glowed faintly, casting soft light around the broken shelter. It felt less like a prison and more like a hidden world. But not everyone was blind to what was happening. Across the colony, sharp eyes watched them. A man wrapped in a dark cloak stood in the shadows, studying Aaron and his alien bride. He noticed the glowing plants, the way she moved, the way her eyes burned with something powerful. He smirked, whispering to himself, "She is not what they think she is." Inside the shelter, Aaron sat near the alien, breaking the stale bread they had been given. He handed her half, but she shook her head, pushing it back toward him. "You eat. Strong need," she said, her words broken but full of care. Aaron felt something twist inside him again. Not anger this time, but something softer. For the first time in many years, he whispered a quiet thank you. The alien blinked in surprise, then gave the smallest smile. That night, when Aaron tried to sleep, he heard her whisper again. Her words were in her alien tongue, but they carried rhythm, almost like a prayer. Through the cracks of the broken roof, the stars glowed bright. Aaron closed his eyes, but he could not stop thinking about her. This alien, sold for $5, mocked and hated, was hiding something much bigger. The punishment was turning into a mystery, and Aaron knew he was standing at the edge of something far greater than shame. First signs of change. The days passed slowly, and Aaron began to notice small changes around him. The alien bride, once mocked as a stinking slave, no longer smelled of dirt and rot. She had learned how to mix herbs and wash herself with the glowing plants she grew. Her presence inside the shelter was still strange, but no longer unbearable. Aaron spent his mornings watching her work with the plants outside. Her hands were thin but steady, her fingers moving carefully as if she carried knowledge beyond this world. The tiny shoots she planted grew faster than any human crop. Some leaves glowed faintly at night, giving the shelter a soft light that felt almost comforting. The people of the colony still mocked them, but Aaron knew something had changed. She was not just surviving, she was rebuilding. One morning, Aaron found her trying to sweep the floor of the shelter with a bundle of dried branches. It was clumsy, but she worked hard, clearing dust and broken wood. Her yellow eyes looked up at him, waiting for his reaction. Aaron almost laughed, but instead, he nodded silently. Her lips curved into a faint smile, the second smile he had seen since their forced marriage. Day by day, she tried to learn human words. At first, her speech was broken, slow, and awkward, but Aaron was surprised at how quickly she remembered. Food, she would say, pointing at bread. Water, she whispered, holding the small clay cup. And one evening, she looked at him directly and said, "Thank you." The sound of those two words shook something inside Aaron. He realized she was not only learning his language but also learning his world. This alien, treated as worthless, was fighting to belong. And though he did not want to admit it, her effort made his anger fade little by little. But not all changes were quiet. One night, while Aaron was half asleep, the sound of movement outside woke him. He rose quickly, ready to defend himself. 3 men had entered the shelter yard, carrying knives and laughing cruelly. "Let's see what the soldier's stinking wife is worth," one of them sneered. Aaron rushed forward, but before he could strike, a sudden flash of light burst in the dark. The alien bride stood tall, her glowing eyes burning brighter than ever. She raised her hands, and the plants she had grown shot upward like whips of green light. The attackers screamed as the vines wrapped around their arms and legs, pulling them to the ground. Aaron froze in shock, his heart racing. The men struggled, but the plants held them tight until they could no longer move. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light faded, and the plants returned to stillness. The attackers crawled away in terror, never looking back. Aaron turned to her, his voice low. "What are you?" he whispered. The alien lowered her hands slowly, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Her eyes dimmed, but her expression was calm. She looked at him and said in broken words, "No slave." Aaron could not sleep that night, his mind filled with questions. If she was not just a slave, then who was she? Why had she been sold for $5? And why had the council chosen her for his punishment? He lay awake, staring at the faint glow of the plants, while she whispered in her alien tongue. Her words were soft, almost like a lullaby. Though he did not understand, they calmed his restless thoughts. The next day, Aaron noticed how people looked at them differently. Some kept their distance, fear in their eyes. Others whispered rumors of what had happened the night before. The story of glowing vines and burning eyes spread quickly, but no one dared to challenge them again. Inside the shelter, the bond between Aaron and his bride grew stronger. She no longer sat silently in the corner. She moved with purpose, cleaning, planting, and even laughing softly when Aaron tried to teach her new words. At times, her laughter echoed in the small space, a sound so pure that Aaron felt warmth in his chest. He had once thought his punishment was worse than death, but now, he was beginning to wonder if fate had chosen a different path for him. Still, danger lurked in the shadows. The man in the dark cloak who had watched them before had seen everything. He had witnessed the vines, the light, the strange power hidden within her, and he knew that the council would pay well for such knowledge. With a sly smile, he vanished into the night, leaving behind only whispers of betrayal. Aaron did not yet know of the spy. He only knew that his world had begun to change. The alien was no longer just a punishment, no longer just a bride forced upon him. She was a mystery, a secret wrapped in scars and power. And though he still carried shame in the eyes of the colony, inside the broken shelter, he felt something else. Hope, dark secrets. The night after the attack was restless. Aaron lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the broken shelter. The alien bride slept quietly in the corner, her breathing soft, her glowing eyes now dim like dying embers. But the memory of her power haunted him. The vines, the light, the way her voice had commanded nature itself. No ordinary slave could do such things. At dawn, Aaron stepped outside, the air cold and heavy with mist. The plants she had grown were alive, their leaves shimmering faintly as if holding pieces of starlight. He touched one carefully, and it pulsed with warmth, like it was alive beyond the roots. He pulled his hand back quickly, his heart racing. Who was she, really? When he returned inside, she was already awake. She sat with her pouch of seeds, carefully counting them with her thin fingers. Aaron sat opposite her, his eyes fixed on her glowing hands. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but demanding. Tell me the truth. Who are you? The alien bride raised her eyes slowly, sadness heavy in her gaze. For a long time, she said nothing, only the sound of wind filling the silence. Then, in broken human words, she whispered, "No slave, no a nothing." Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with hidden fire. She pointed to the scars on her arms, long and deep, carved like cruel symbols. "Captured," she said softly. "Taken, sold, $5." Aaron frowned, trying to understand. She struggled with words, mixing them with her alien language. But the meaning was clear. She had once belonged to something greater, something powerful. Aaron leaned closer, his voice low. "You were not born a slave, were you?" She shook her head, her tangled hair falling across her face. "Family, high, strong," she whispered. "They betray, sell me." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, tears shimmered in her glowing eyes. Aaron felt a heavy knot in his chest. The colony thought she was worthless, a joke worth only $5. But in truth, she was part of something far bigger. A royal bloodline perhaps, or a tribe with secret power. If the council knew this, they would not have punished him with her. They would have killed her or used her as a weapon. For days after, she revealed little pieces of her past. Her world had once been green and full of light. Her people lived close to nature, their bodies glowing with the same energy that flowed in the plants. But war came, betrayal followed, and she was taken, chained, and sold across markets until she reached this colony. Her voice broke when she said, $5, my life." Aaron listened in silence, his heart heavy. He saw the way her hands shook when she remembered, the way her eyes dimmed when she spoke of her family. She was not just his punishment anymore. She was a victim, a survivor, and maybe the last of her kind. But outside their broken shelter, whispers grew louder. The story of the glowing vines spread across the colony. Some called her a demon. Others said she was cursed. And the spy in the dark cloak carried his tale to the council hall. "There is power hidden in the slave you gave to Aaron," he told them. "If you are wise, you will take her back before it is too late." The council listened carefully, fear and greed mixing in their eyes. One leader whispered, "If what he says is true, we cannot allow this power to grow in secret." Another said, "She was sold for $5. We did not know her worth. Now we must take her." And so the plan began. Back in the shelter, Aaron trained quietly. He sharpened broken metal into blades, knowing the colony would not stay blind for long. The alien bride watched him, her glowing eyes soft. "You protect me," she said, almost like a question. Aaron paused, then nodded slowly. "Yes, I will," he answered. Her lips curved into the smallest smile, and for the first time, she whispered a word that made his heart stop. "Husband." That night, the bond between them grew stronger. Aaron no longer saw her as a curse or a punishment. He saw her as a secret worth protecting, a soul worth saving. But he also knew danger was closing in. The council would not ignore her forever. The colony would not stay silent. And soon, both their lives would be tested in fire and betrayal. Love in shadows. Days turned into weeks, and life inside the broken shelter began to change. Aaron and his alien bride were no longer strangers. They worked side by side, planting glowing crops, cleaning their shelter, and sharing the little food they had. The bond between them grew slowly, like a seed finding light in the darkest soil. The colony still mocked them, whispering cruel words whenever they passed. "Look at the soldier and his filthy bride." Some laughed. Others made signs of protection, as if warding off an evil spirit. But Aaron no longer lowered his head. He walked straight, his alien bride walking beside him, their steps steady and proud. For every insult thrown at them, their silence grew stronger. Inside the shelter, small moments of warmth began to bloom. At night, she would whisper human words she had learned. Water, light, friend. Her voice was soft, almost musical, and every new word she spoke felt like a treasure. Sometimes she laughed when Aaron corrected her. Her laughter was quiet, fragile, but real. It filled the empty shelter with a sound Aaron never knew he needed. One evening, as the sun sank behind the colony walls, Aaron sat sharpening a blade of metal. The alien bride sat across from him, weaving dried grass into thin ropes. She looked at him with glowing eyes and whispered, "Husband, strong." The word made his chest tighten. For the first time, he did not hear punishment in her voice. He heard trust, maybe even hope. But shadows grew outside their fragile peace. The spy in the dark cloak returned to watch them again. He saw how close they had become, how the alien smiled, how the plants around their shelter glowed brighter than ever. He smirked to himself. "Love in shadows," he whispered. Then he vanished into the night, carrying news back to the council. The next day, whispers in the colony became louder. Some claimed the alien was casting spells on Aaron. Others said she had cursed him, that her glowing plants were signs of dark magic. Fear began to spread, and with fear came hatred. Children threw stones at their shelter. Women spat at the ground when they walked past. Men muttered threats under their breath. Aaron's fists burned with rage, but each time, his bride touched his arm gently and whispered, "No fight." At night, when the world outside was quiet, they shared stories in broken words. Aaron told her about his childhood, about the stars he dreamed of exploring. She listened with wide eyes, whispering her own stories in her alien tongue. Though he could not understand, he felt the weight of her words, the pain of betrayal, the longing for a lost home. Sometimes tears slid down her glowing cheeks, and Aaron wiped them away gently. "Not slave," he told her, his voice steady. "Not curse, not punishment." And she smiled through her tears, whispering, "Not alone." But danger crept closer. One night, as they slept, a shadow moved near the shelter. A hand pushed open the broken door, and the spy stepped inside, his knife glinting faintly in the moonlight. He crept toward the sleeping couple, his breath slow and careful. But before he could strike, the alien's eyes snapped open, glowing bright like fire. In a single motion, vines erupted from the ground, wrapping around the intruder's legs and pulling him down. He screamed, his knife clattering to the floor. Aaron woke instantly, grabbing his blade and pressing it to the man's throat. "Why are you here?" Aaron growled, his eyes burning with fury. The spy trembled, his voice shaking. They sent me, the council. They fear her power. They want her back." The alien's vines tightened, the man crying out in pain. Aaron looked at her, saw the fire in her eyes, the strength she carried. "Let him live," Aaron said firmly. The vines loosened, and the spy gasped for breath. Aaron leaned closer, his voice cold as steel. "Tell the council this. She is mine, and I will protect her with my life." The spy stumbled out of the shelter, vanishing into the night. But Aaron knew the council would not stop. He turned to his bride, her eyes still glowing, her body shaking from the power she had used. He touched her shoulder gently, whispering, "We will survive this together." She looked at him, tears glimmering in her eyes, and whispered one word that sealed their bond: "Forever." From that night on, their love grew in the shadows of fear. The colony hated them. The council hunted them. But inside their broken shelter, they found strength in each other. Every laugh, every whisper, every shared meal was a rebellion against the world that wanted to break them. And though danger waited outside, inside they had discovered something stronger than fear, something worth fighting for, worth dying for: love. The revelation. The night after the spy fled, silence hung heavy over the broken shelter. Aaron sharpened his blade again and again, his mind racing with worry. His alien bride sat near the glowing plants, her fingers tracing the leaves as if drawing strength from them. They both knew the council would not stay silent. They would come, and when they did, there would be no mercy. At dawn, a sound broke the morning calm, the heavy beat of boots on the colony's streets. Aaron pushed open the door and saw them. 10 armed soldiers marching toward the shelter. Behind them walked the spy, his cloak torn but his smile wicked. And behind the soldiers came the council leaders, their faces hard, their eyes full of greed and fear. The people of the colony gathered, whispering, pointing, their voices filled with excitement. "This is it. They will take the alien away," some muttered. "Maybe they will kill her, maybe they will kill him too," others whispered. The crowd laughed, but Aaron's jaw tightened, his fists gripping the blade with fire in his eyes. The soldiers stopped in front of the shelter, their leader stepping forward. "Aaron," he barked, "your punishment is over. Hand over the alien slave." Aaron's chest burned with rage, but his voice came out steady. "She is my wife. She is not a slave, and you will not take her." The crowd gasped, some mocking, some shocked. The soldiers raised their weapons. But before they could move, the alien bride stepped forward. Her glowing eyes burned brighter than ever, her thin frame standing tall and unshaken. For the first time, she spoke clearly, her voice stronger, her words sharp in human tongue. "I am not slave. I am not yours. I am free." The ground trembled beneath her feet. The plants around the shelter shot upward, glowing with fierce light. Roots burst from the earth, wrapping around the soldiers' legs and pulling them down. The crowd screamed, some running, others staring in awe. The council leaders stepped back, fear spreading across their faces. Aaron stood frozen, watching the power erupt from her. She raised her arms, and the vines glowed brighter, the light spreading through the ground like fire. The soldiers struggled, but their weapons were torn from their hands, thrown aside like toys. The spy screamed as a vine coiled around his throat, lifting him off the ground. Her voice thundered through the air, not soft, not broken, but full of command. "You call me slave, you call me dirt, but I am more than you ever knew." The council leader shouted in panic, "She is dangerous. Kill her now." But no one moved. Fear froze their bodies. Aaron stepped forward, placing his hand gently on her arm. Her glowing eyes turned to him, filled with both fury and sorrow. "Enough," he whispered, his voice calm. Slowly, the vines released the spy, dropping him gasping to the ground. The soldiers staggered back, their faces pale with terror. The alien bride lowered her hands, her glow fading, her body trembling from the effort. Aaron caught her before she fell, holding her close. The crowd watched in silence now. No laughter, no mocking, only fear and awe. Aaron lifted his head, his voice loud enough for all to hear. "She is my wife, and I will fight anyone who tries to take her." The council leaders exchanged nervous glances. They had thought her weak, a worthless slave, but now they saw the truth. Her power was real, dangerous, and beyond their control. To strike her down would risk the colony itself. To let her live meant their authority would crumble. Fear won over greed, and the leaders signaled for retreat. The soldiers stepped back slowly, their weapons lowered. The spy crawled away into the crowd, his eyes full of hatred but his body broken by fear. And the council walked away without another word. The people whispered in shock, some crossing themselves, others bowing their heads. No one dared to laugh, no one dared to mock. When the crowd finally dispersed, the shelter stood silent again. Aaron carried his bride inside, laying her gently on the floor. She was weak, her breaths heavy, but her eyes still glowed faintly. "You, safe," she whispered, her voice soft. Aaron gripped her hand tightly, his own eyes burning. "No," he said, "we are safe together." That night, the stars shone bright above the broken roof. Aaron sat awake beside her, watching her sleep. The colony had seen her power. The council had felt her wrath. And though danger was far from over, one thing was clear. She was not a slave, not a curse, not a punishment. She was something greater, something that could change everything. And Aaron knew his life, once filled with shame, now carried a purpose he could never have imagined. Happier than ever. The night after the council retreated was filled with silence. For the first time since his punishment, Aaron felt no shame when he looked at his alien bride. She was no longer seen as weak, no longer mocked as a $5 slave. The colony had witnessed her power, and fear now walked where laughter once lived. Aaron stayed close to her side as she rested. Her body was weak from using so much energy, but her spirit remained unbroken. When she opened her glowing eyes, she found him watching her, his expression softer than ever before. "You protected me," he whispered, his voice low. Her lips curved into a faint smile as she answered, "We protect, together." The days that followed were tense. The people of the colony no longer threw stones, no longer mocked them in the streets. Instead, they kept their distance, whispering when they passed, bowing their heads in uneasy respect. Some even left food near the shelter, too afraid to approach but too guilty to ignore. The colony that had once laughed at Aaron now feared the woman they had called worthless. And slowly, fear began to turn into respect. Inside the shelter, life grew brighter. The glowing plants blossomed into fruit, sweet and filling. Aaron and his bride shared meals that no longer tasted of hunger but of hope. Every evening, she spoke more words in human tongue, her voice growing clearer, her laughter easier. Aaron, once broken by punishment, now found himself smiling. He discovered peace in her presence, strength in her touch. He had been forced into this bond, but now he would have chosen it willingly. Yet danger still lingered beyond their small world. The council met in secret, their faces pale with fear. "We cannot kill her," one whispered. "She is too strong. Her power could destroy us all." Another replied, "But if we let her live, she will rise against us. She will make the people turn." Greed and fear warred in their hearts. But no decision came, for none of them dared to face her again. Back in the shelter, Aaron built new walls with his own hands. Stronger wood, sharper defenses, hidden blades buried in the earth. His bride worked beside him, planting more seeds, weaving ropes, preparing herbs. They were no longer simply surviving. They were building a life. And every night, when the stars filled the sky, they sat together and whispered dreams. "Someday, free land," she said softly, pointing to the horizon. "Someday?" Aaron agreed, gripping her hand tightly. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky burned orange, a small group of children crept near the shelter. They were curious, their eyes wide with wonder. Instead of mocking, they watched the glowing plants with awe. One child whispered, "Is she a monster?" Another shook his head and said, "No, she is magic." The alien bride knelt down, offering the children a glowing fruit. They hesitated, but when one tasted it, his eyes lit with joy. The others laughed, eating happily, their fear melting into trust. Word spread quickly. Soon, not just children but even adults came quietly at night, seeking food, seeking healing. The alien bride never turned them away. She offered fruit, herbs, and quiet words of comfort. Slowly, the colony began to change. They no longer called her a curse. They began to call her something else. Hope. Aaron watched all of this with pride. What had started as humiliation had become something far greater. He had been punished with marriage to a slave, but now he stood beside a woman who had changed not just his life but the lives of many. He looked at her and whispered, "They thought you were nothing, but you are everything." She touched his cheek gently, her glowing eyes filled with warmth. "Together, everything," she whispered back. The council could do nothing. The people no longer feared them, their power slipping away as the alien bride's kindness grew stronger. To strike her down now would mean rebellion, so they stayed silent, watching their control crumble. Seasons passed, and the broken shelter became a home filled with light. The plants grew tall, covering the walls, turning the ruin into a living sanctuary. Children played in the yard. Families came to trade peacefully, and in the heart of it all stood Aaron and his bride, no longer punished, no longer mocked, but respected, loved, and free. One night, as they sat beneath the stars, Aaron turned to her with quiet words. "When they punished me, I thought my life was over." She looked at him, her eyes glowing softly, her voice calm. "But now," he continued, "I know it was the beginning." She smiled, leaning closer, whispering the words she had learned slowly, carefully, "Happier than ever." And as the stars burned bright above, Aaron knew it was true. What began as shame had become joy. What began as punishment had become love. What began with $5 had become priceless. And in the shadows of a cruel world, they had built a life worth fighting for, worth living for, together, happier than ever.